might say that I'm a loner, but I just call it being free. I am my heart's only owner, or at least I used to be. 'Cause now a wildfire is raging deep inside, and my heartstrings are pulling like the tide. And the match that drew a spark was a single stolen kiss. And if that ain't love, I don't know what is. For years I've kept my feelings grounded and gone without, all kept within. By these high walls I've been surrounded, walls to her eyes only paper thin. 'Cause now a wildfire is raging deep inside, and my heartstrings are pulling like the turning of the tide. And the match that drew the spark was a single stolen kiss. And if that ain't love, I don't know what is. If that ain't love, I don't know what is.
Misty eyes, you are my happy ending. Don't know why I've been playing it coy, pretending at your heart's expense. Misty eyes, you are home to me, the only place that I long to be, whenever I'm away. happy ending. I apologize for playing it coy, keeping you as my toy, when all along I was yours, misty-eyed.
Life's a coat of many colors. It is never black and white. Can't have one without the other. The dark without the light. In the summer we were lovers. With the flame our hearts would burn, a flame the autumn would smother, and leave this heart to yearn forever blue, forever blue. I'm putting on a show for the world to see. No one will ever know that without you I'm forever blue. No more waking up early just to watch you sleep. We turn a blind eye to worry, but such times we'll never keep. I found a new smile this morning that doesn't come out as a frown, a smile to wear while performing, and to hide the tears of this clown. Forever blue, forever blue. I'm putting on a show for the world to see. No one will ever know that without you I'm forever blue. Yeah, I'm putting on a show for the world to see. No one will ever know that without you I'm forever blue.
Sorry, guys. I'll have to put on one more song. I've got a phone call I've got to take care of. So enjoy. What do you know?
I've been to the top of Mount Everest. I've sailed the 7 seas. I've shared the stage with all the best. Lot of good it did for me. I've walked the wall of China, walked till my feet were sore. Came home to Carolina, I found my love next door. Well, what do you know? I didn't have to travel the world. Yeah, what do you know? To find a brown-eyed man for a blue-eyed girl. What do you know? Somehow all that I've been longing for was found right here next door to me. Well, what do you know? I didn't have to travel the world. Yeah, what do you know? To find a brown-eyed man for a blue-eyed girl. What do you know? Somehow all that I've been longing for was found right here next door to me. I rode that Trans-Siberian, been shipwrecked and washed ashore. Got Trevor's story Shakespearean, still I found my love next door. Well, what do you know? Oh, I didn't have to travel the world. Yeah, what do you know? To find a brown-eyed man for a blue-eyed girl. What do you know? Somehow all that I've been longing for was found right here next door to me. Was found right here next door to me.
Sorry about that delayed start. I'm turning off my fucking phone, I swear. And one day I'm going to do it. Protein shake. Nasty. Alright, so let's get started with a little bit of Frankenstein. This totally wasn't supposed to happen last week. There we go. Let me get the book. We're doing chapter 1 and maybe chapter 2 today. Hoping this site I'm using actually is formatted a little better than the last one I was using, which was kind of hindering the reading. Yeah, I think you can see the chat better. Make yourself a little louder. Do I need to be a little louder, guys? Because, I mean, there's not going to be any audio behind me. This isn't going to have music like my private ones. Why did you go right back to the fucking letter? It begins. My pain begins. We'll just have to use this format. I use 2 sites for reading this because the formats get wonky on each site after a while. And for some reason, the first site that I use, which has a better format, is stuck at the letters page, and I can't get it to chapter 1, and that's driving me absolutely bonkers. Or it just skips the chapters. What? Yeah, it does. And then it skips to chapter 8. What the heck? Well, I'll be sounding better once I get the new mic and everything set up next month, which I've got to go buy a new table. That's going to be a fun shopping trip. So I'm like, no, I don't want to go do that right now. Just give me a second. Sorry, I'm trying to find it on this site, and it's, if you only saw the formatting, you'd scream. Please do not format your PDFs like this. The letters don't take that long. Fuck it. There we go. Yeah, you are the worst formatted site I've ever seen. So here we go, chapter 1. I am by birth a Genovese, and my family is one of the most distinguished of that republic. My ancestors had been for many years counselors and syndics, Old English, and my father had filled several public situations with honor and reputation. He was respected by all who knew him for his integrity and I hate Old English. In, in I can say that word. It begins indefatigable, whatever, attention to public business. This is why I record this shit and I don't do it live. He passed his younger days perpetually occupied by the affairs of his country. A variety of circumstances had prevented his marrying early, nor was it until the decline of life that he became a husband and the father of a family. As the circumstances of his marriage illustrate his character, I cannot refrain from relating them. One of his most intimate friends, who was a merchant, who, from a flourishing state, fell through numerous British mischances into poverty. This man, whose name was Beaufort, really? Okay, was a proud and unbending disposition, and could not bear to live in poverty and oblivion in the same country where he had formerly been distinguished for his rank and magnificence. Having paid his debts, therefore, in the most honourable manner, he retreated with his daughter to the town of Lucerne, where he lived unknown and in wretchedness. My father loved Buford with the truest friendship, and was deeply grieved by his retreat, not retweet, woo, in these unfortunate circumstances. He bitterly deplored the false pride which led his friend to a conduct so little worth of the affection that united them. He lost no time in endeavoring to seek him out, with the hope of persuading him to begin the world again through his credit assistance. Beaufort had taken effectual measures to conceal himself, and it was 10 months before my father discovered his abode. Overjoyed at this discovery, he hastened to the house, which was situated in a mean street near the Ruse. But when he entered, misery and despair alone welcomed him. Beaufort had saved but a very small sum of money from the wreck of his fortunes, but it was sufficient to provide him with substance for some months, and in the meantime he hoped to procure some respectable employment in a merchant's house. The interval was, consequently, spent in action. His grief only became more deep and rankling when he had leisure for reflection, and at length it took so fast hold of his mind that at the end of 3 months he lay on a bed of sickness, incapable of any exertion. His daughter attended him with the greatest tenderness, but she saw with despair that their little fund was rapidly decreasing, and that there was no other prospect of support. But Caroline Beaufort possessed a mind of an uncommon mould, and her courage rose to support her in her adversity. I can speak. She procured plain work. She plaited straw, and by various means contrived to earn a pittance scarcely sufficient to support life. Also, puppy, please stop showing me your tummy. Several months passed in this manner. Her father grew worse. Her time was more entirely occupied in attending him. Her means of subsistence decreased, and in the 10th month her father died in her arms, leaving her an orphan and a beggar. This last blow overcame her, and she knelt by Beaufort's coffin, weeping bitterly. When my father entered the chamber, he came like a protecting spirit to the poor girl, who committed herself to his care, and after the interment of his friend, oh God, no, Bosco! sorry, of his friend, he conducted her to Genevieve and placed her under the protection of a relation. 2 years after this event, Caroline became his wife. Oh, I see how it is. Puppy only cares about attention. Dyslexia, Miko strike again. No, ADHD and Miko strikes again. Oh god! Oh god. Hold on one moment. Sorry, guys. Let's go, baby. You picked the worst freaking time. Oh, great. Now I gotta find my place again. It begins. There was a considerable difference between the ages of my parents, but this circumstance seemed to unite them only closer in bonds of devotion and affection. Devoted affection. Devotion and affection. Either one works. There was a sense of justice in my father's upright mind, which rendered it necessary that he should approve highly to love strongly. Perhaps during former years he had suffered from the late discovered unworthiness of one beloved, and so was disposed to set a greater value on tried worth. There was a show of gratitude and worship in his attachment to my mother, differing wholly from the doting fondness of age, for it was inspired by reverence for her virtues and a desire to be the means of, in some degree, recompensing her for the sorrows she had endured, but which gave inexpressible grace to his behavior to her. Everything was made to yield to her wishes and her convenience. He strove to shelter her as a fair exotic is sheltered by the gardener. As a fair exotic? Okay. From every ruer wind, and to surround her with all that could tend to excite pleasurable emotion in her soft and benevolent mind. Women must be protected, everyone. Her health and even the tranquility of her God, not this word. It no, it keeps coming back to haunt me. Hitherto, constant spirit, and had been shaken by what she had gone through. During the 2 years that had elapsed previous to their marriage, my father had gradually relinquished all his public functions, and immediately after their union they sought the pleasant climate of Italy, and the change of scenes and interest attendant on a tour through that land of wonders, as a restorative for her weakened frame. I want to go to Italy. Do I have to marry a rich man to go to Italy? From Italy they visit Germany and France. No, I'm out. I, their eldest child, was born at Naples, and as an infant accompanied them in their rambles. I remained for several years their only child. Much as they were attached to each other, they seemed to draw inexhaustible stores of affection from every mine of love to bestow upon me. My mother's tender caresses and my father's smile of benevolent pleasure while regarding me are my first recollections, and this is how an SJW is born. No, I'm gonna stop those jokes in the middle of reading this. Yes, that word has started showing up in visual novels now. I was their plaything, and their idol, and something better, their child, the innocent and helpless creature bestowed on them by heaven, whom to bring up to good, and whose future lot it was in their hands to direct to happiness or misery, according as they fulfilled their— Don't give me that look, puppy. You really did that. I knew she was going to do that. Where was I? According as they fulfill their duties towards me, with this deep consciousness of what they owed towards the being to which they had given life, added to the active spirit of tenderness that animated both. It may be imagined that while during every hour of my infant life I received a lesson of patience, of charity, and of self-control, I was so guided by a silken cord that all seemed but one train of enjoyment to me. For a long time I was their only care. My mother had much desired to have a daughter, but I continued their single offspring. When I was about 5 years old, while making an excursion beyond the frontiers of Italy, they passed a week on the shores of Lake Como. Their benevolent disposition often made them enter the cottages of the poor. This, to my mother, was more than a duty. It was a necessity, a passion. Remembering what she had suffered and how she had been relieved. For her to act in her turn the guardian angel to the afflicted. During one of their walks, a poor cot in the foldings of a veil attracted their notice, as being singularly disconsolated, while the number of half-closed children gathered about it spoke of penury in its worst shape. One day, when my father had gone by himself to Milan, my mother, accompanied by me, visited the abode. She found a peasant and his wife, hard-working, bent down by care and labor, distributing a scanty meal to 5 hungry babes. Among these there was one which attracted my mother far above all the rest. She appeared of a different stock. The 4 others were dark-eyed, hardy little vagrants. This child was thin and very fair. Her hair was the brightest living gold, and, despite the poverty of her clothing, seemed to set a crown of distinction on her head. Her brow was clear and ample, her blue eyes cloudless, and her lips and the molding of her face so expressive and sensibility and sweetness that none could behold her without looking on her as of a distinct species, a being heaven sent, and bearing a celestial stamp in all her features. She was the white one. The peasant woman, that's not actually in the story, that was my joke, sorry. The peasant woman, perceiving that my mother fixed eyes of wonder and admiration on this lovely girl, eagerly communicated her history. She was not her child, but the daughter of a Milanese nobleman. Her mother was a German who had died on giving birth. The infant had been placed with these good people to nurse. They were better off then. They had not been long married, and their eldest child was but just born. The father of their child was one of those Italians nursed in the memory of the antique glory of Italy. One among the Schiavi. I think I have an Italian in here. Bosco, if you're in here, how the hell do you say this? Schiavi agnar fermente? Oh, I need to practice my Latin, don't I? Schiavi agnar fermenti, who exerted himself to attain the liberty of his country. He became the victim of its weakness. Whether he had died or still lingered in the dungeons of Austria was not known. His property was confiscated. His child became an orphan and a beggar. She continued with her foster parents, and bloomed in their rude abode, fairer than a garden rose among dark-leaved brambles. When my father returned from Milan, he found playing with her in the hall of our villa a child fairer than the pictured cherub. Milanese. There are 2 S's along E, so it's Milanese. Okay, so it's Milane. Okay. Damn Italians. A creature who seemed to shed radiance from her looks and who, from form and motions, were lighter than the chamois of the hills. The apparition was soon explained. With his permission, my mother prevailed on her rustic guardians, okay, to yield their charge to her. They were fond of the sweet orphan. Her presence had seemed a blessing to them. But it would be unfair to her to keep her in poverty and want when Providence off, offered, afforded her such powerful protections. They consulted their village priest, and the result was that Elizabeth Levon. No, it's gonna happen. Elizabeth Levenza. I need to practice my Italian so bad. Became the inmate of my parents' house, my more than sister, the beautiful and adored companion of all my occupants and my pleasures. No eluding the children. Everyone loved Elizabeth. The passionate and almost reverential attachment with which all regarding her became, while I shared it, my pride and my delight. On the evening previous to her being brought to my home, my mother had said playfully, "I have a present for you, Victor. Tomorrow he shall have it." And when on the morrow she presented Elizabeth to me as her promised gift, here's a slave, I, with childish seriousness, interpreted her words literally and looked upon Elizabeth as mine to protect, love, and cherish. All praise bestowed on her I received as made to a possession of my own. Kid, I was kidding. We called each other familiarly. We called each other familiarly by the name of cousin. No word, no expression could body forth the kind of relation in which she stood to me, my more than sister, since till death she was to be mine only. No, kid, no. Isn't the whole English pigs from the German and pork is from the French? Is it? I have no idea. I'm not a specialist in languages. I just dabble in different languages sometimes. Great, he's possessive. Yeah, most kids are like that. Chapter 2. We were brought up together. There was not quite a year's difference in our ages. I need not say that we were strangers to any species of disunion or dispute. Harmony was the soul of our companionship, and the diversity sorry, that word's been ruined for me. And the diversity and contrast that subsided in our characters drew us nearer together. Elizabeth was of a calmer and more concentrated disposition, but with all my ardor, I was capable of a more intense application, and was more deeply smitten with a thirst for knowledge. She busied herself with the following aerial creations of the poets, and in the majestic and wondrous scenes which surrounded our Swiss home, the sublime shapes of the mountains, the changes of the seasons, tempest and calm, the silence of winter, and the life and turbulence of our alpine summers. She found ample scope for admiration and delight, while my companion contemplated with a serious and satisfied spirit the magnificent appearances of things. I delighted in investigating their causes. The world was to me a secret which I desired to divine. Curiosity, earnest research to earn the hidden laws of nature, gladness akin to rapture as they were unfolded to me, are among the earliest sensations I can remember. Yeah, but you gotta hope the possession doesn't turn into the bad way. Well, we'll find out with this book. On the birth of a second son, my junior, by 7 years, my parents gave up entirely their wandering life and fixed themselves in their native country. We possessed a house in Geneva. I don't know why I say Genevieve. I know it's Geneva. In Geneva, and a campaign on Belrive, the eastern shore of the lake, at the distance of rather more than a league from the city. We reside principally in the latter, and the lives of my parents were passed in considerable seclusion. This is why I do this shit pre-recorded. Genevieve sounds better. I don't know why my brain keeps doing that. It was my temper to avoid a crowd and to attach myself fervently to a few. I was indifferent, therefore, to my schoolfellows in general, but I united myself in bonds of the closest friendship to one among them, Henry Cla- Why? Clarvel. Please stop using his last name. That's going to save me a ton. Was the son of the merchant of Geneva. He was a boy of singular talent and fancy. He loved enterprise, hardship, and even danger for its own sake. He was deeply read in books of chivalry and romance. He composed heroic songs and began to write many a tale of enchantment and knightly adventure. He tried to make us act plays and to enter into masquerades, in which the characters were drawn from the heroes of, oh God, it gets worse, Roncesvalles of the Round Table of Arthur, and the chivalrous train who shed their blood to redeem the holy, oh God, I give up, I give up, Sepulchre from the hands of the infidels. Give me a second, I need a drink. My tongue hates me. Damn you British fucks, why do you have to write like this? No human being could have passed a happier childhood than myself. My parents were possessed by the very spirit of kindness and indulgence. We felt that they were not the tyrants to rule our lot according to their caprice. But the agents, caprice I did right, really? Whatever. But the agents and creators of all the many delights which we enjoyed. When I mingled with other families, I distinctively discerned how peculiarly fortunate my lot was, and gratitude assisted the development of filial love. British, stop it. I can write for shit. Don't blame me for Mary Shelley's book. You freaking British. Write like Americans. At least the next one we're doing is The Last Unicorn. That's... Oh crap, is that one American? I can't remember if the writer's American or not. Which is terrible since I've met him. My temper was sometimes violent, and my passions vehement. But by some law in my temperature... No, I got it right. Why am I retarded? Temperature. They would turn not towards childish pursuits, but to an eager desire to learn, and not to learn all things indiscriminately. I confess that neither the structure of languages, nor the code of governments, nor the politics of various states possessed attractions for me. It was the secrets of heaven and earth that I desired to learn, and whether it was the outward substance of things or the inner spirit of nature and the mysterious soul of a man that occupied me, still my inquiries were directed to the metaphysical, or in the highest sense, the physical secrets of the world. America. Yes. Meanwhile, oh God, no, why do you use the last name? Meanwhile, Clerval, I'm just gonna call him Clee. Meanwhile, Clee occupied himself, so to speak, with the moral relations of things. The excuse me, I should have muted myself. The busy stage of life, the virtues of heroes, and the attractions of men were his themes, and his hope and his dream was to become one among those whose names are recorded in story as the gallant and adventurous benefactors of our species. The saintly soul of Elizabeth shone like a shrine dedicated lamp in our peaceful home. Her sympathy was ours, her smile, her soft voice, the sweet glance of her celestial eyes were ever there to bless and animate us. She was a living spirit of love to soften and attract. I might have become sullen in my studies, rough through the ardor of my nature, but that she was there to subdue me to the semblance of her own gentleness, and God no, and Claire could out could aught I'll entrench on the noble spirit of of Clerval, yet he might not have been so perfectly humane, so thoughtful in his generosity, so full of kindness and tenderness amidst his passion for adventurous exploits, had she not unfolded to him the real loveliness of benevolence, and made the doing good the end and aim of his soaring ambitions. That's why I don't do readings in the morning. My opinion, the worst English words in the world is Worcestershire. Yes, it is, especially when you have a speech impediment. So Germans write like British, apparently. Wait, is she British? Or is she German, I mean? I thought she was... I have failed lit or something? I feel exquisite pleasure in dwelling on the recollections of childhood, before misfortune had tainted my mind and changed its bright visions of extensive usefulness into gloomy and narrow reflections upon self. Besides, in drawing the picture of my early days, I also record those events which led, by insensible steps, to my after tale of misery. For when I would account to myself for the birth of that passion which afterwards ruled my destiny, I find it arise like a mountain river from ignoble, okay, ignoble, okay, and almost forgotten sources, but swelling as it proceeded, it became the torrent which, in its course, has swept away all my hopes and joys. Natural philosophy is the genius that has regulated my fate. I desire, therefore, in this narration, to state those facts which led to my predilection, for that science. When I was 13 years of age, we all went on a party of pleasure to the baths near Thenon. The inclemencies of the weather obliged us to remain a day confined to the inn. In this house I chanced to find a volume of the works of Cornelius Agrippa. I opened it with apathy. The theory which he had attempts to demonstrate, and the wonderful facts which he relates, soon changed this feeling into enthusiasm. A new light seemed to dawn upon my mind. Bonding with joy, I communicated my discovery to my father. My father looked carelessly at the title page of my book and said, "Ah, Cornelius Agrippa, my dear Victor, do not waste your time upon this. It is sad trash. I can do Shakespeare with no issue, but you give me Mary Shelley and I start ruining it." English is a weird language. If, instead of this remark, my father had taken the pains to explain to me that the principles of Agrippa had been entirely exploded, and that a modern system of science had been introduced which possessed much greater powers than the ancient, because the powers of the latter were chimerical, chimerical, while those of the former were real and particular. Under the circumstances, I should certainly have thrown Agrippa aside and have contented my imagination, warmed as it was, by returning with greater adorn to my former studies. It is even possible that the train of my ideas would never have received the fatal impulse that led to my ruin. But the cursory glance my father had taken of my volume by no means assured me that he was acquainted with its contents, and I continued to read with the greatest avidity. When I returned home, my first care was to procure the whole works of this author, and afterwards the Paraculus, and Albertus Magnus, all of the Latin. I read and studied the wild fancies of these writers with delight. They appeared to me treasures known to few besides myself. I have described myself always as having been imbued with a fervent longing to penetrate the secrets of nature. In spite of the intense labor and wonderful discoveries of modern philosophers, I always came from my studies discontented and unsatisfied. Sir Isaac Newton is said to have avowed that he felt like a child picking up shells beside the great and unexplored ocean of truth. Those of his successors in each branch of natural philosophy with whom I was acquainted appeared even to my boy's apprehensions as tyros engaged in the same pursuit. Give me a second. The untaught peasant beheld the elements around him and was acquainted with their particular uses. The most learned philosophers knew little more. He had partially unveiled the face of nature, but her immortal lineaments were still a wonder and a mystery. You have to buy her dinner first. He might dissect and anatomize and give names, but not to speak of a final cause. Causes in the secondary and tertiary grades were utterly unknown to him. I had gazed upon the fortifications and impediments that seemed to keep human beings from entering the citadel of nature, and rashly and ignorantly I had repined. Don't hurt Earth-chan. Is now everyone just discussing English? But here were books, and here were men who had penetrated deeper and knew more. I took their word for all that they averred, not arrived, and I became their discipline. It may appear strange that such should arise in the 18th century. Isn't that cute? But while I followed the routine... What the hell? Oh. Hold on. Okay, she's asleep. But while I followed the routine of education in the schools of Geneva, did it again, Geneva, did it again, Geneva, I was to a great degree self-taught with regard to my favorite studies. My father was not scientific, and I was left to struggle with a child's blindness, added to a student's thirst for knowledge. Under the guidance of my new preceptors, I entered the greatest diligence into the search of the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. We've seen what happens on Full Metal Alchemist. But the later soon obtained my undivided attention. Wealth was an inferior object, but what glory would attend the discovery if I could banish disease from the human frame and render man invulnerable to any but a violent death. Nor were these my only vision. The raising of ghosts or devils was a promising liberally, according by my favorite authors, the fulfillment of oh crap. Wait, what was that? The fulfillment of which I most eagerly sought, and if my incantations were always unsuccessful, I attributed the failure rather to my own inexperience and mistake than to a want of skill or fidelity in my instructors, and thus, for a time, I was occupied by exploded systems, mingling like an unapt 1,000 contradictory theories, and floundering desperately in a very slough of multifarious knowledge, guided by an ardent imagination and childish reasoning, till an accident again changed the current of my ideas. When I was about 15 years old, we had retired to our house in Belrive, when we witnessed a most violent and terrible thunderstorm. It advanced from behind the mountain of Jura, and the thunder burst at once with frightful loudness from the various quarters of the heavens. I remained while the storm lasted, watching its progress with curiosity and delight. As I stood at the door, on a sudden I beheld a stream of fire issue from the old and beautiful oak which stood about 20 yards from our house, and so, as the dazzling light vanished, the oak had disappeared, and nothing remained but a blasted stump. When we visited in the next morning, we found the tree shattered in a singular manner. It was not splintered by the shock, but entirely reduced to thin ribbons of wood. I never beheld anything so utterly destroyed. Before this, I was not acquainted with the more obvious laws of electricity. On this occasion, a man of great research in natural philosophy was with us, and excited by this catastrophe, he entered on an explanation of a theory which he had formed on the subject of electricity and galvanism, which was at once new and astonishing to me. All that he had said threw greatly into the shade of Cornelius Agrippa, Albertus Magnus, and Paraculus. The lords of my imagination, but by some fatality, the overthrow of these men disinclined me to pursue my accustomed studies. It seemed to me as if nothing would or could ever be known. All that had so long engaged my attention suddenly grew despicable. By one of those caprices of the mind which we are perhaps most subject to in early youth, I at once gave up my former occupations, set down natural history and all its progeny as a deformed and abortive creation, and entered the greatest disdain for the would-be science which I could never even step within the thresholds of real knowledge. In this mood of mind I betook myself to the mathematics and the branches of study appertaining to that science, as being built upon secure foundations, and so worthy of my consideration. We're almost done. Thus strangely are our souls constructed, and by such slight ligaments are we bound to prosperity or ruin. When I look back, it seems to me as if this almost miraculous change of inclination and will was the immediate suggestion of the guardian angel of my life, the last effort made by the spirit of preservation to avert the storm that was even then hanging in the stars and ready to envelope me. Her victory was announced by an unusual tranquillity and gladness of soul which followed the relinquishing of my ancient and latterly tormenting studies. It was thus that I was to be taught to associate evil with their prosecution, happiness with their disregard. It was a strong effort of the spirit of good, but it was ineffectual. Destiny was too potent, and her immutable laws had decreed my utter and terrible destruction. So that's the end of chapter 2. Next time we'll be doing chapter 3 because I hate Old English. I hate Old English like a motherfucker. Old English mixed with Latin, that's always good. So I hope you guys did enjoy chapter 1 and 2 of this. It'll be up a little later on the channel. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was great. And if you guys haven't seen it, I'm going to give you guys a link to a video to watch. Irate Bear just did his first reading as Lord Bear. A thing I actually requested, so I've got to grab it. I'm going to watch it probably while I'm editing. Oh, crap. Oh, yeah, he put it in my files here. It's a 4chan text. Oh, God. Don't autoplay, god damn it. That autoplay made it sound terrible. So here you go, guys. If you want to see it for yourself, go give him some love. You didn't. This is why I usually do my stuff private, but I kind of like doing it live and seeing your guys's. Fuck New British. Fuck Old English. But seriously, it's fun. Once we do this, we're going to be probably doing maybe the last unicorn, or I'll do a vote for the next one. But yeah, he did a really funny green text. Go check it out. Go sub to his channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Love you all. Bye.